Hi everyone. In today's video, we're going to meet Illyria Ashcroft, who after a serious car accident in 2023 was declared dead for 7 minutes and had a transformative encounter with Jesus Christ. He revealed dark truths about the future and the enigmatic mark of the beast. What she saw will leave you speechless. So leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell so you don't miss any details of this incredible story. My name is Illyria Ashcroft, and if you had met me before December 2023, you would have seen me as a woman who had it all. She was a marketing executive at a large company in Denver, Colorado, making a lot of money and enjoying a lifestyle that many envied. My life was a sequence of successful campaigns, work trips, and accomplished goals. But what no one knew, not even me, until that moment, was how lost I was. I don't say lost in terms of career or achievements, but lost spiritually. I attended church regularly, like anyone who was raised in a Christian home. On Sundays, I dressed in my best attire, smiled at the other worshipers, and listened to the sermons with a pang of guilt, but also with indifference. Faith, for me, was like a painting on the wall, something beautiful to look at, but that you don't touch or really feel. My prayers were mechanical, as if I were reading a script. I was disconnected, but I didn't know it. This disconnect was a reflection of my entire life. On the outside, I looked strong and confident, but inside, I felt an emptiness that no promotion, trip or new pair of shoes could fill. My days were busy, and the nights were lonely. I thought it was fine that way, until the day everything changed. On December 12, 2023, my life was interrupted in a brutal and, at the same time, divine way. After a serious car accident on a rainy morning, I was declared clinically dead for 7 minutes and 23 seconds. When I came back to life, everything was different. I had seen something that no one should forget, the truth about the future of humanity and the message of Jesus Christ to the world. This is not a story I tell easily. I know many won't believe me. Perhaps you are thinking that this is all an invention, a delusion, or the result of a disturbed mind. But what I saw, heard, and felt is as real as the ground beneath my feet right now. I am no longer the same person, and my mission to share this message is clear. Before the accident, my life seemed like a parade of achievements. I was the director of marketing for one of the largest technology companies in Denver, recognized for my ability to create innovative campaigns and for always exceeding goals. I was the type of person who never took no for an answer. This made me a ruthless professional, but it also isolated me from people. My apartment in the city center was impeccable, decorated with furniture from famous designers. It was more of a showcase than a home. The walls displayed awards and certificates of achievement, but were missing photos of family or friends. When I looked around, I realized that everything reflected my obsession with success and the appearance of perfection. At night, sitting on the couch with a glass of wine in my hand, I often wondered why I felt so empty, but I never let this restlessness grow. I always found a new goal to pursue. My relationship with God was practically non-existent. I grew up in a Christian family, where we went to church every Sunday, and I still maintained this habit, but only out of obligation. I prayed before meals and sometimes at night, but those prayers were automatic, like a wish list. God, give me success in this campaign. Or God, help me get that promotion. I never truly thanked him, nor did I seek to understand his will. The truth is, I didn't want to hear it. I was afraid that if I made room for God, he would ask me to change, and I wasn't ready to do that. My best friend, Rebecca Hollis, was the only person who seemed to see through the facade. "You never stop, Illyria," she said once while we were eating lunch. "You're always running after something, but it seems like you don't know what you're really after." I laughed nervously and said nothing, but those words stayed with me. I was also estranged from my family. My brother, Nathaniel, tried to warn me several times. "You're losing yourself, Illyria," he told me during a Thanksgiving call. "Success will not fill the emptiness you feel." I hung up the phone, irritated. Who was he to judge me? He didn't have a career like mine, nor the success I had achieved. I believed I was on the right path, until the accident proved otherwise. It was a typical December morning in Denver, with the snow beginning to melt and the roads covered in a treacherous mix of water and ice. I was late for an important meeting with a high-profile client. My phone was constantly buzzing with messages and notifications, but I ignored them, focused on getting to my destination. It was raining lightly, and traffic was slower than normal. I held the steering wheel tightly, impatiently. My hands were cold, and my heart was racing with anxiety. The road felt like an obstacle course, but I didn't let that stop me. I believed that nothing would stop me from achieving my goals, not even bad weather. Suddenly, a truck in the opposite lane lost control on a curve. I watched, in slow motion, as the heavy vehicle crossed the central divider and headed straight towards me. My instinct was to slam on the brakes, but the car slid on the ice. There was nowhere to escape. The impact was devastating. Everything around me shattered in a deafening crash. My body was thrown against the steering wheel, and the last thing I remember was the sound of glass shattering and the feeling of my chest being crushed. Then there was silence. Not an ordinary silence, but something deep, almost absolute. After that, everything went dark. I didn't know that my heart had stopped, and that the paramedics were racing against time to try to save me. I later learned that I was pronounced dead at the scene. My body lay motionless on the wet asphalt, as the flashing lights of ambulances illuminated the scene. The people around looked with sadness and resignation. Meanwhile, something extraordinary was happening. I was no longer in the car. Somehow, I could see my own body lying on the road as the paramedics tried to revive me. I felt no pain, no despair. Instead, an indescribable peace came over me. It was as if I had been freed from all the weight and worry. I was drawn away from that scene, as if an invisible force was gently pulling me. I didn't fight it. In fact, I gave myself completely. It was the beginning of something I could never have imagined. My journey beyond the veil of mortality. As I was drawn away from the scene of the accident, I felt an indescribable lightness. It was as if all the worries and fears I had carried throughout my life had dissolved. There was no pain, just an absolute peace that seemed to fill every part of my being. At the same time, a feeling of curiosity and expectation took over me, as if I were about to discover something great. I looked around and realized I was no longer on the road. The environment around me was enveloped in a warm, golden light that pulsed as if it were alive. It wasn't just light, it was love, understanding, and truth. It was as if this light knew every part of me, even the thoughts and feelings I had never shared with anyone. And surprisingly, I felt no judgment, just deep acceptance. As I floated, I started to hear music. It was more than sound. It was a heavenly melody that seemed to intertwine with the very essence of the place where I was. The voices in perfect harmony weren't singing in a language I knew, but somehow I understood. They conveyed messages of love, redemption, and purpose. Suddenly, I was drawn to a greater presence, a more intense light that radiated a heat that was not physical, but spiritual. And then, he appeared, Jesus Christ. He stood before me, in a form that was both human and divine. His eyes, like living flames, stared at me, and I felt that he saw everything about me. Not just the moments I wanted to remember, but also the ones I'd rather forget. His presence was not only majestic, it was comforting, like I was finally home. He called my name, Illyria. His voice was firm, but full of love. At that moment, I fell to my knees, not because he demanded it, but because my soul could do nothing else in the face of such glory. You were brought here for a purpose, he said. With a gesture, he began to show images and scenes before me. It was like watching a movie, but I felt every emotion deeply. I saw moments of my life, both the good and the bad. And then he said something that changed everything. There is something you need to know, something you must share. As Jesus stood before me, his expression became serious. He showed me something that looked like scenes from the future, but they were much more than just images. I felt every detail, every emotion, as if I were living it. At first, I saw a technologically advanced world, where people seemed to have found solutions to problems we face today. I saw families smiling as they passed scanners that confirmed their identities with just a wave of the hand. I saw people implanting small devices in their hand or forehead that allowed them to pay for goods, access services, and even monitor their health. These advances will be celebrated, Jesus explained, with a serious tone. They will be presented as progress, as a solution to global problems, identity theft, child safety, human trafficking, but this will be the introduction of the mark of the beast. I felt a shiver pass through me, even in that spiritual state. It was not physical fear, but a deep understanding of the weight of what he said. It will not be evil at first sight. continued Jesus, as new scenes unfolded before me. These devices will be promoted as necessary for the good of humanity. Many Christians, including those who have studied the scriptures, will be deceived by their beneficial appearance. I saw entire churches embracing the technology, pastors preaching that there was nothing wrong with accepting it, and people celebrating its convenience. It's just a chip, many said. It's safe. It's for our good. Jesus paused and looked at me, as if he wanted me to fully absorb what he was about to say. Accepting this mark will be a spiritual choice, Illyria. It will not just be a technological device. It will be a declaration of where your trust lies, in human systems or in me. The scenes changed to something darker. I saw people who had accepted the mark gradually lose their ability to discern the truth. I saw families being separated, Christian communities being persecuted, and an irreversible spiritual disconnection being created in those who chose the brand. Jesus explained that this choice, although it seemed small and practical at first, represented the surrender of the soul to that which is not divine. But there is hope, he said, and the intensity in his voice brought unexpected comfort. I will provide for mine. Those who refuse to accept the mark will be protected, even though they face hardship. You must warn the world, Illyria. You must tell them to strengthen their faith, to create communities and prepare, not out of fear, but for wisdom and love. The visions ended, and the light around us grew brighter. That is your mission now, Jesus concluded. Illyria, you have been chosen to be a voice amid the storm to come. When Jesus finished revealing the truths about the mark of the beast, he looked at me with a love I cannot describe. I felt both comfort and responsibility. His next message was clear. I was to help prepare people for what was coming. It was not just a warning, but a call to action. Preparation should be practical, spiritual, and communal. Illyria, he began, fear not. The world will face challenges, but those who trust in me will have everything they need. I want you to share what you saw and help people become stronger. Strengthen faith and relationship with God. He explained that the basis of all preparation was a true and deep relationship with God. It was not enough to know the scriptures or attend church. It was necessary to pray sincerely, listen to God, and seek the truth with humility. Jesus showed scenes of people in prayer, some in absolute silence, others in groups, supporting each other. Faith will be the shield that protects you, he said, and I felt the urgency in his words. Create support communities. Then he showed groups of Christians who refused to accept the mark. They lived simply, often far from large urban centers. They shared food, skills, and, above all, spiritual support. They were not without difficulties, but there was a peace and joy between them that was visible. You must come together, Jesus continued. Strength is not in independence, but in community. He emphasized that these communities would be a refuge for those seeking the truth. I saw people helping each other with resources and prayers, their actions motivated by love and compassion, not fear. Divine providence will be upon them, Jesus said. I will take care of everyone who trusts in me. Practical and alternative skills. The preparation was not just spiritual. Jesus also spoke about the importance of practical skills. He showed visions of people learning to grow their own food, create their own clothes, and trade fairly without relying on conventional systems. You cannot be totally dependent on the world accepting the mark, he explained. They must prepare to live outside of it. There were also alternatives for communication and commerce. I saw Christians creating support networks, exchanging goods and information in an ingenious way, without compromising their faith. It was a vision of peaceful, creative resistance against a system that would try to force them into submission. Message of hope. Finally, he left me with a message that still echoes in my heart. Fear not, Illyria. All of this is not to create fear, but to prepare mine. Tell them that I will never abandon them. Even in the darkest moments, I will be with them. No matter what the world offers you, choose the truth. Choose me. The moment of return was as sudden as the initial transition. As Jesus continued speaking, I felt something change. It was as if an invisible pull began to pull me away from his presence. My soul resisted. I didn't want to leave that place of absolute peace and love, but he looked at me with a compassionate smile and said, Now, Illyria, it is time to return. They need you. Before I could react, I felt a force pulling me back. The light around me began to disappear, and in a matter of moments, everything went dark. I felt like I was falling, but there was no fear. just the feeling of being led by something bigger. When I opened my eyes, a wave of physical pain and confusion washed over me. The sound of voices around me was muffled, as if I were underwater. "She's back. My God, she's back," exclaimed one of the paramedics. His voice was choked, as if he himself couldn't believe what he was seeing. All around me, the faces of rescuers and doctors were marked with shock and relief. I knew they had given up. I later learned that my clinical death had lasted 7 minutes and 23 seconds, long enough for them to begin preparing death reports. Despite being alive, something had profoundly changed. My body was back, but my soul had been transformed. I remember trying to speak, but my voice was hoarse, as if it hadn't been used for a long time. One of the paramedics held my hand and said, "You are a miracle, Illyria." We were ready to give up. My mind was clear, even though my body was exhausted. The images and words Jesus had shared still pulsed inside me, as vivid as if I were still in his presence. When they took me to the hospital, doctors and nurses were checking my vitals, all shocked by the lack of brain or physical damage. There was no scientific explanation for my return to life in such perfect conditions. As I rested in the hospital bed, tears streamed down my face. They were not of sadness, but of gratitude. I had been given a new chance, and now I had a mission I couldn't ignore. I began to repeat the words Jesus had told me, like a mantra, "Do not be afraid, I will be with you." In the days following my return, my mind was consumed by the mission Jesus had entrusted to me. As doctors and nurses came and went, marveling at my recovery, I could barely sleep. His words resonated in my heart. "Tell them, strengthen your faith, prepare them." My family was the first to show up at the hospital. When I saw my brother, Nathaniel, walk through the door, I burst into tears. He ran to me, holding my hands, confused and relieved at the same time. "Are you okay, Illyria? I can't believe it. We thought we lost you." I looked at him, trying to find the right words. I saw Jesus. "Nathaniel," I began, my voice cracking with emotion. "He showed me things we need to know. We need to prepare." Nathaniel frowned, clearly worried. "You are traumatized, Illyria. It was a terrible accident. It's normal to have strange dreams when you're on the verge of death." But I couldn't let him dismiss it as simple delusion. "It wasn't a dream, Nathaniel," I insisted, more firmly than I expected. "I was dead. I saw the truth and we need to talk about it." He didn't respond, but his silence spoke volumes. He didn't believe me, and he wouldn't be the only one. When I was finally released from the hospital, my first decision was to share what I had experienced with Rebecca, my closest friend. Unlike Nathaniel, Rebecca listened to each word carefully, her eyes wide. "Illyria, this is scary and amazing at the same time," she said. "But how are you going to make people believe it?" It was a good question. Even with the conviction I felt, I knew I would face skepticism and ridicule. "It doesn't matter if they believe it or not," I replied. "My mission is to speak, and God will do the rest." I started slowly, talking to small Christian communities and local pastors. Many were receptive, but others dismissed my message, saying it was paranoia or exaggeration. Some churches even banned me from returning. "This is hysteria, Illyria," said a pastor. "Our congregation does not need any more fear." The rejection was painful, but Jesus' words echoed in my mind. "Tell them, fear not." Little by little, people started to join me. Rebecca helped organize support groups and Bible studies while I shared my experience. It wasn't easy, but I knew I was on the right path. As the months passed, my message reached more people. Although many still rejected what I said, something surprising began to happen. Small communities began to form. These were not just traditional religious groups. They were communities of people united by a genuine desire to seek the truth, strengthen their faith, and prepare for what was to come. "Illyria, are you sure about this?" asked Rebecca, as we reviewed plans for an event we were hosting in Denver. It was a meeting to share what I had learned and encourage others to create support networks. "People are scared, and the world is confused. How will we know if we are really doing the right thing?" I looked at her with a tired but determined smile. "Rebecca, I don't know all the details, but I know what I saw, and I know what Jesus asked of me. It's not about fear, it's about discernment. If we trust him, he will guide us." At the event, the hall was full. Some people were curious, others visibly skeptical. I went up on stage, took a deep breath, and started to speak. I told him about the accident, the encounter with Jesus, and the visions he had shared with me. I didn't hide behind vague words or euphemisms. I was direct. The mark of the beast will not come as something evil at first glance, he said, looking directly at the audience. It will be presented as progress, as a solution, but it is a spiritual choice. It won't just be a chip or a technology. It will be a statement of where your trust lies, in human systems or in God. There were murmurs among the crowd. Some lowered their heads, reflective, while others exchanged suspicious glances. But I continued. Jesus showed me that challenges will come, but he also assured me that he will never abandon his own. Preparation begins with a heart for God, with communities of support, and with the wisdom to discern good from evil. At the end of the event, some people approached to thank and share their own spiritual experiences. Others left in silence, still digesting what they heard. I knew I couldn't reach everyone, but every soul who heard the message was a victory. Today, my mission continues. My message is not one of fear, but of hope. Jesus did not show me these truths to cause fear, but to prepare and strengthen those who are willing to listen. As he told me that day, "Fear not, I will take care of mine." My journey is not over yet, but I know I am not alone. And as long as there is someone willing to listen, I will continue telling what I experienced, because this is the truth that cannot be ignored. If you like this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment on your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.